The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSR TV, your home for sim racing. Live tonight from the Charlotte Motor Speedway, LSR TV is happy to say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to LSR TV's continuing coverage of the 2018 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC. We're tonight from the Charlotte Roval. We close out the round of 16 as we welcome you inside the LSR TV booth. As always, myself, Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund, happy to be with you this evening on the iRacing Esports Network. Our director downstairs, Brett Wheeler's bringing us to you. And Brian, we take a look at the playoff grid headed into this evening. We pretty much knew what the end result was going to be as of last week. Couple of drivers not being able to compete for these final 10 weeks. So we basically have the 12 drivers set. Now, not all of our playoff drivers are with us this evening. Obviously, the Roval, a big question mark. I think we're in for something. I can't tell you which way it's going to go. So a couple of drivers already locked in, sitting this one out. On the flip side of things, other drivers who are locked in, they've got nothing to lose. So they're looking for some fun this evening.
I think the one thing that's safe to say that we're not going to see tonight is we won't see the entire field barrel off into turn one and hit some tire barriers, because we don't have those on this version of the Roval right now. But it's going to be an exciting race nonetheless. These guys all have no idea what to expect. We have no idea what to expect. I think the one thing that is constant is that it's going to be an exciting race. And the one thing that we've seen for quite a while now, Andrew Freenars is pretty quick. He was fastest in practice, and would you look at that? With a couple minutes left in qualifying, he's currently on the pole. Of course, there's still a handful of drivers left to go in qualifying that could knock him off that. One of those guys that was actually really quick, Lionel Callisto, he has not turned a lap as of yet, and he was just about a tenth off of Andrew Freenar, so he could potentially challenge for that pole before it's all said and done.
Going to be a lot to keep an eye on. Obviously, this is the old iteration of the Charlotte Roval. It is not what you saw a couple of weeks ago with the NASCAR Cup Series side of things. That version should be on the service maybe by the end of 2018. So certainly, I expect to see some action with that track and use here on LSR TV into the future. But other than that, on this iteration, which is primarily the same track, right? I think the big things we're going to note, of course, is it hasn't been done up. So there's not a lot of, in fact, there's no runoff area in the infield, and the chicanes are gone. There's no chicane on the back straightaway. There's no chicane on the front straightaway coming out of what is NASCAR 4. So we're going to be referring to this as a 12-turn racetrack. We'll walk you through those corners as the night goes on. But certainly it's that same base track there. I think it's even less forgiving if that's possible, though.
Oh, it's absolutely less forgiving because, like you said, there's no runoff on the infield. When you go off into the infield there, you make a mistake, you're going to be in the grass, which could lead to you getting into the catch fence in there and cause significant damage to your race car. So you've got to be extremely careful. In the updated version that we'll hopefully see soon, they have the runoff. They have that ability to get out of control and still be on the asphalt and be able to get the car back under control. But in this version, it's not quite that simple. So these guys have definitely had the work cut out for them. But as we've seen in years past, these drivers always rise to the occasion. And I certainly think it's going to be a great race. I'm excited to see what's going to happen at the front of the field here. You see a lot of guys that are pretty close on speeds. And with this being a track that none of them have ever raced on before, it's certainly going to be interesting to see who can rise to the occasion and be the #1 guy throughout the entire night.
That's, of course, going to be the question, and you mentioned some fast drivers not taking the time in the qualifying session. These drivers did get 2 qualifying laps this evening. Normally, it is just 1. but there are some cars on fast times that have not taken a time thus far in that qualifying session. Maybe they are a little bit concerned about what's going to happen down into that first quarter. It's going to be crazy on the restart, we know that, Brian, but at speed, without that chicane coming off at NASCAR 4 to slow them down, it is going to be quite the show as we get set to go race it. 55 laps at the board. Let's go trackside and introduce you to tonight's LSR TV starting grid from the Charlotte Roval race number 23 on 2018 at a final race of the round of 16. So fastest in practice is fastest in qualifying. Andrew Friedar is going to be looking for what would be an unprecedented 5th straight win if he can get it done tonight. His 1 minute 6.316 was the best of all drivers. Spencer Preet qualifies second for this one. He was in a position where for a lot of the practice session, he was scored in first. Kyle Kamer will roll off tonight in the number 3 position. Daniel Falkenham will start 4th, and Dylan Jones will grid from P5.
David Comstock will start from the 6th position here tonight, followed by David Washington. So a pair of Davids starting real close to one another. He starts P7. Then we have Michael Cozy Jr. starting in the 8th position. 9th goes to Brandon Bowie. And 10th on the last car to take a time is Ross Cato starting P10.
And then a couple of other drivers going to take some provisional times. It's going to be Lionel Callisto, Jason Jacoby, Brian Chambliss, and Eric Stanford. About 8 or so drivers not making the start here this evening. We saw that earlier, Brian. Segment 2 saw both Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Those were the only road courses that had been on the schedule for the longest time. Carrillo won at Sonoma, and Dylan Jones won at Watkins Glen. Always a little bit of a drop-off. Couple more not making a start here tonight. And as we work through the track, what you're seeing right now, the right-hander that they make down this infield back straightaway, that right-hander is turn 4, just to kind of break down how all of this is going to work this evening. They'll then get down to the straightaway. This right-hander is turn 5. You will then go 6, 7, and 8 will be the transition back out onto the oval. And at that point, you get turn 9, which is on the oval itself, turn 1. 10 is turn 2. Turn 11 tonight is what is NASCAR 3, and turn 12 is NASCAR 4. That's how you get to the 12-turn, 2.25-mile road course from Charlotte. Right there, though, coming back up onto the banking, going to be a critical spot to watch. We will go green this time by. Field going to double up. Turn 1, I think, the most critical point, though, all race long. At that point, if you get through there, you got a long way to go, 124 some odd miles to fight through.
Absolutely, but like you said, the transition coming out of the infield up onto the NASCAR turn 1, that's going to be the most important part of the racetrack, because you're talking about trying to gas it up and go through the transition of the banking up to the actual banking of the racetrack, and it's very difficult on these cars, and it definitely makes them a handful as you're trying to get back up to speed. So you've got to be very careful not to make any mistakes right there, and hopefully you can get up through the gears pretty quickly, because you're carrying all that speed all the way down here to turn 3 where they're about to be right now. This is going to be the first time they're going to have to decelerate. They will have to lift coming through 3 and 4, or the NASCAR 3 and 4, and if they can get through there pretty cleanly, they come back to the start-finish line, and it really completes what could be a really fast lap for these guys.
And with the lack of the chicane on the back and the front, I think that the oval part of this presents a lot more passing opportunities than what you saw 2 weeks ago. These cars are very loose. When they're up and on the banking, it's going to be a fun one to watch. We're so happy that you're with us on LSR TV and the iRacing Sports Network. For the first time ever on a Monday night, we're going to get set to go roll racing for the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Green flag in the air, and they're going to go up and onto the gas. Spencer Preet caught sleeping, and Daniel Falkenham, no intentions of taking it easy. He tries to go topside. Preet going to stick with him. Everybody gets into the infield for the first time, trailing the 88 car.
You're going to see these guys, they're going to get single file very quickly as they go through the infield for the first time as a group. They have not been down here in a group of cars all night long. This is their first time, so they want to be very careful in these first couple of laps. Don't really want to test their boundaries right now. They're going to be very smooth as they try to get through here. A lot of places you can run off the racetrack and make some big mistakes. So right now, everybody's just being careful. But you can see Spencer Preet is staying hot on the heels of Andrew Freenars as now they make their way towards back up onto the NASCAR turn 1. And you can see a big run coming out of the infield there for the 88 and the 37. Looks like Friedars might have gotten a little bit of a jump on them now. They go down this long back straightaway. They're going to be very loose coming down here in the turn into what would be the NASCAR turn 3. This is turn 10. they have to be very careful here, especially on cold tires, because it can be very treacherous for them.
And there's a battle right now, actually, for P6 on the banking, just like you would see in another time. Dylan Jones up on the inside of the 77. Michael Cozy Jr., they're going to both drive it in hard, and look how much time they made up on Comstock. Comstock a lot more conservative. Look at that yellow wall there as the 11 gets sideways, and Jones hangs on to it. So although there is not that tire barrier that Brad Keselowski dove down into, if you don't make the turn into the infield, there's still the pit road wall there, and that is obviously a cause for concern. Comstock a lot more cool into the corner, but you can see the 77 and the 11 challenge each other, and Cozy, who is very fast in practice also, he's under fire. Jones to the inside, the left-hander in turn 7. We'll take another left-hander in turn 8 and rejoin the banking. The 98 can't make a challenge. They head up on a NASCAR 1. It's turn 9 on the Roval.
And that was an impressive series of racing right there between Dylan Jones and Michael Cozy Jr. I was really impressed with how well they were able to race side by side in the infield, and they didn't get into each other, but you could see just how out of control those drivers were. They were racing it on the edge all the way through the infield. Now as they work their way back around to the NASCAR front stretch, you're coming to the start-finish line. There's a little bit of a gap this time, so you're not going to see that side-by-side battle down into turn 1 like we saw last time, but they still have to get into the braking zone very good. It looks like Cozy's going to miss the corner. That allows Dylan Jones to get there. Now they're side by side once again. Can Dylan make it happen? This is where he got loose a lap ago. He's able to get back up through the gears a little bit better this time, but he didn't have the preferred line. Now he sneaks to the inside, trying to take that position away. Oh, they make contact. They make contact right down there in the infield, and they're still side by side.
And the 11 really wants this spot. There's no curbs to really define how low you can cut that corner. Cozy doesn't want to give this one up and get all of these drivers safe and into the round of 12. So they're just out having some fun on the Roval tonight, and there's the payback, baby. A little bit of contact from the 11 to the 77. Cozy drives it hard off of the banking, and it is a three-way fight now with the 98 of Dave Washington right there. Does he dare make it 3 wide sideways? Is the 11 on the inside, and we are 3 wide headed into turn 3 on a NASCAR track. That's turn 11 on this Roval, and as they come off of 4, which is 12, the 98 machine splits the difference, and David Washington, give him 2 spots, and he'll leave the 77 and the 11 to fight with each other behind him. They're cutting it oh so close to that wall there on the outside of turn 1.
Gotta like the 2-for-1 special for Dave Washington. He gets by both of them, and meanwhile, the 77 of Michael Cozy, the 11 of Dylan Jones, they continue their battle as they just cannot seem to get away from one another. Now it looks like Cozy might have finally given himself a little bit of a gap. Maybe Dylan Jones got just a little sideways trying to get back up through the gears, but now they start to kind of settle things down just a hair. Dylan Jones now has to look in his rearview mirror because here comes Lionel Kalisto out of nowhere, looking like he's got a pretty fast car. And as they get ready to make their way back up onto the NASCAR turn 1, you can see this is such a hard part of the racetrack to get back into, because as we talked about, you're coming off the flat surface of the infield. You got to transition off the apron up onto the banking of the racetrack, and it is extremely difficult to do and get in the gas and stay full throttle. But these guys are doing a great job now, and the longer this run goes, the more the tires wear out, the harder that part of the racetrack is going to be for these guys.
Yeah, the more difficult certainly it is going to be to get around that back portion of the infield where it's very loose. But of course, when you're up and on the banking doing 170 miles an hour, old tires not friendly at all. Surprised how many battles we're still seeing, and Michael Cozy Jr. again nearly takes out that yellow wall down into turn 1. That's a good battle, and 97 Masita Kalisto on the inside, contact with Jones. Again, there's no curbs down on the inside, so it's up to the driver leeway. I'm sure that we're playing around in practice, seeing how much they can get out of that before the sim considers it a cut corner, and Lionel Kalisto kind of barrels his way through to take over P8. He's the driver that missed the first race of this round, but after making a start just a week ago from Richmond, should be able to advance into the round of 12. Expect to see the 97 every week, but he gets sideways back up and onto the banking, and Jones comes on the counterattack.
Kalisto is another one of those drivers. He's really good on the road courses. He finished 3rd at Sonoma. He was running up inside the top 5 at Watkins Glen before getting caught up in an accident, but just one of those guys. This is the type of racing that really fits his style, and it does not surprise me at all to see how fast he is. Surprises me more so that he didn't get a lap in qualifying. I'm not sure if maybe he had some issues, but definitely very surprised that he didn't start towards the front of the field. But very, very impressive so far through this run. Is now we see Dylan Jones starting to close back in on Michael Cozy Jr., trying to get back to that position, trying to challenge for that 7th spot. Just not quite able to get close enough to make a move on him yet. But he's got a little bit of a double fire going on because he's trying to go after the 77, but he's got to look in the mirror and see that 97 coming after him. And then right behind them, here comes Brandon Bowie as well. So Dylan Jones is in the middle of quite a mess right now, just trying to find his way through here and get as many positions as possible.
The stories we talked about at the previous 2 road courses was how close the intervals were when you talk about them being spread out over the course of what is a really long lap. Battle for 7th. Look at the 11 of Jones. Nearly cut it too low, and he was about going through the grass on the exit of that quarter on this roll that's considered turn 8, and nearly wrecked himself trying to get around Cozy, but we saw so close intervals at places like Sonoma, Watkins Glen. Qualifying times in the top 10 this evening were spread out by about 1.5 seconds, so certainly a lot more differences driver to driver. That had a handful of days to practice with this fixed setup that all of the other drivers are working on it. Of course, we have never seen a race here in these Cup cars on the Charlotte Roval. I expect, again, that's going to be a lot more busy, I'm sure, when we move into 2019. But on this older circuit, which, again, in principle is the same track, just with a lot less of the forgiving aspects of it, a lot more question marks remain. But we've seen great stuff out of the gate so far. Cozy's still going to be under fire. Jones, Callisto, that battle 7, 8, 9. But a battle for the race lead, not all that separated either. Preet lost a little bit of time in the infield that last time by, but it's still within 1 second between 1 2.
Yeah, Spencer Preet has done a great job keeping that gap down, and like you mentioned, he had a little bit of an issue in the infield, got sideways at one point and had to check up. That cost him a little bit of time, but he's still very close to where if Andrew Freenars were to make a mistake, he could get right there. And worth mentioning that about a half a lap ago, Daniel Falkingham was able to make his way past the 8 machine of Kyle Kamer to take that 3rd position away. So they had a nice little battle going on as well, but now Falkingham has pulled away by about 1 second over that 8 machine. He's trying to make his way closer to the back bumper of Spencer Preet. He's about 1.5 seconds off of Spencer Preet right now, but looks very quick, and you can see the 37 made a ton of time going off into turn 1. He outbraked Andrew Freenars by a lot, made that gap a much smaller than it was, and he's down to about 0.5 seconds now and is trying everything he can to get back to the back bumper of him, and he looks really solid this time, making up for what happened the last time in the infield. Now he has a little bit of a wiggle trying to get back into the gas, and as they get ready to go back up onto the NASCAR oval, he's got a big run here trying to make a move out after the 88 right now.
You're on the board with Preet as he chases down to race leader Andrew Freenars, as we mentioned at the top. Freenars looking for a 5th straight win. If he'd be able to do so, that would be the longest win streak on the entirety of 2018. Dylan Jones had a 4-race win streak stemming through Chicago, Daytona, Kentucky, and New Hampshire. In the middle portion of the season, segment 2, it was ironically enough Freenars who broke that one up. It has not been a driver other than Jones or Freenars at victory lane since mid-June. But Michael Guerrilla won on a road course. That one coming at Sonoma, as previously mentioned. So maybe Spencer Preet going to have an opportunity to break through. Preet looking to find some success. Won on the season opener at Daytona. He's into the round of 12. Could be a late season championship competitor. We've really been seeing him pick it up in the last couple of weeks.
Indeed we have. It is worth mentioning that about a lap ago in the infield, Daniel Falkingham, who was in 3rd, had an issue. He went off the track into the grass, and he gave up a couple of positions, gave up to Kyle Kamer and David Comstock, fell back to the 5th position, and lost about 3 seconds off of where he was at. So that's how quickly things can go wrong for you here at the Charlotte Roval. And that's why being out in the grass and not having that runoff like they do with the newer version that we'll hopefully see very soon, it's so pivotal not to make that mistake down in the infield, because it's hard to get back into the gas without spinning the car out. You have to be very, very careful once you get off the racing surface. You don't really have that freedom of the asphalt runoff like we've seen in the Monster Energy race here. So you have to be very careful, but now he's got to get back around the 42 of Comstock and the 8 of Kamer if he wants to get back close to Spencer Preet. So that's how quickly things can change for these drivers. But you can see that battle for 3rd and 4th is starting to heat up as Comstock has closed in on the back bumper of the 8 machine, trying to get his way to the front. This is a driver that is traditionally pretty fast on the road courses. I was a little surprised at his qualifying time, starting in the 6th position here tonight, but he's making up for it now as the run goes on. He seems like he's getting better and better, and he's starting to get closer to the front.
Curious to see how many drivers utilize that second opportunity at a qualifying lap. Again, typically it is 1 lap, and that's it. 2 available to the drivers this evening. Curious if anybody was able to better their time a second trip around. Road course with older tires, it would be difficult, but of course there's so many places to make up and lose time. Anything is possible. I was just about to note, impressive that everybody who started still in this race. Eric Stanford has gone behind the wall. His night is done. He was ready to back into 14th position. He overshot turn 1, got into that right-hand outside wall, which we've seen your race leaders been cutting it out so close to. It severely damaged the right front of that car. He made a contact right on the right front tire, and that car would not turn when it got into the infield section. He tried to fix it, but his night is done. Here's the fight for third. The 42 looking, but he inside a little bit too loose, and he'll lose some time now through turn 1.
It is so hard to make that move right there because you have to try to outbrake the driver in front of you, but you can't go too far with it because then you won't make it into the infield. So you have to be very, very careful. And Comstock was almost on the edge right there as he tried getting onto the brakes as late as possible and actually wheel hopped going off into turn 1. So he had a very scary moment. Now he's trying to make up for it, and you can see he gave up a significant amount of time to the 8 machine, about a second, and now he's continuing to struggle just a little bit. Looks like he's very loose going through the infield portion of the racetrack right now. And now he gets up onto the NASCAR turn 1, trying to do everything he can right here to get back to that 8 machine. But he gave up a ton of time on the infield right there, easily about a second to the 8 machine. So that's not the way you want to see it be done right there. But meanwhile, the gap between first and second right now has moved up to about a second. Spencer Preet is beginning to fade, it looks like, just a little bit. And the one thing we have not thought about so far, Evan Pasoko, is what fuel mileage is going to look like. I think that's a big unknown for all of these drivers. I think it's safe to say they're not going to go the distance of this race, 55 laps, without having the pit. Traditionally, if you look at Sonoma, Watkins Glen, they can go about 20 to 25 laps. Do we expect that the fuel mileage will be about the same here for this race?
Well, it's tough to, obviously, without a sample size, we could very well see drivers simply go for the one stopper and try to split it up in half. The time, the length of this race, at least 55 laps, the exact length of what we saw out of the Xfinity Series when they ran here just 2 weeks ago. Of course, it's not the same track down to a T, but more or less the 2.25 mile road course. Pretty spot on. Again, simply just minus the 2 chicanes on the back and on the front straightaways. So it kind of fits right into that ballpark, but also this race length, and again, it's a completely different kind of track. I'm sure tire wear is completely different, but pretty much equal distance, Brian, to the road courses that we've already seen this year. So drivers have some idea. Maybe we've seen a couple of teams work in the last few days do a full fuel run. They had an hour-long practice session earlier. I don't think any drivers made it through a fuel run without incidents. I think a lot of them are really pushing it to figure out where that boundary and where that line was going to be. But certainly that's the biggest question mark. It may be where the move for the race win comes from tonight, because Spencer Preet has his moments where he'll get a lap that's a couple of tenths better than Friedar, so close the gap, and then the next time around it'll be a little bit slower. So those two continue to bounce back and forth. The gap between first and second, the largest margin we've seen thus far at 1.2 seconds. So this race could come down to some pit strategy, on top of the fact that when you're out on track, I think your main objective, don't wreck the race car. Sometimes it's a lot easier said than done. These guys were really digging off of the green flag.
Yeah, they really have been. And the other thing they do have to think about, too, is the tires, because the longer we're out here, the harder they're going to be abusing these tires, which means the lap times are going to begin to fall off. I mean, they've already fallen off almost 3 seconds. Actually, they have fallen off 3 seconds from their fastest lap. I was just looking at Spencer Preet. His fastest lap of the race was on lap 2. He ran a 106.8. Well, right now he's running 109.6s and 7s pretty consistently. That is a full 3 seconds off of where he was at. So if you stay within a couple seconds of the race leader like Spencer is right now, and maybe you short pit by 1 lap, just 1 lap over Andrew Freenar's, that freshness on tires could potentially get you the race leaders. Oh, Spencer Preet actually locks the brakes up going off into turn 1, lock that left front up. That's not what you want to see, because that could leave a flat spot on the tire, which could certainly affect the handling of the race car, and that's not what you need when you have to go out here and potentially run at least another handful of laps before you're coming to pit road.
I think that has to be the most treacherous quarter on the racetrack. There's other places where, sure, the car's very loose. This end of the racetrack at the infield, when you go through the back portion here, the right-hander, this is turn 6. The 37 is in. He'll go down the hill into turn 7, and it's kind of tough to see over the crest there. Left-hander turn 8, he gets back up and on the banking. NASCAR 1 is turn 9 at the oval, and you saw the bobble there. So he's sideways, he's loose, and listen, that's a problem at every single quarter. I think the least forgiving turn is turn 1 because that's the one that bit Eric Stanford and took him out of this race. Battle for 8th and 9th position, and a lot of cars in this fight. Dave Washington from P6 even just dropped back. Brandon Bowie's there. Dylan Jones and Michael Cozy. Even 5 cars. Toss Lionel Kalisto into the mix as well. You've got 5 seconds between first and second, and you've got 3 amongst these 5 cars mid-pack.
So are we running a road course or are we running an oval? Because these guys are racing closely enough to where it looks like they're running the oval right now, but that's just how competitive all of these drivers are. They're right on top of each other. You could throw a blanket on top of them. That's how close they are. Very impressive as Bowie throws the car down in underneath the David Washington. Dylan Jones goes sideways and somehow starts to hang on to it, but then he spins out and is going to lose all kinds of track position, gets out of the way as looks like Jason Jacoby was coming by and almost got into him, but a big moment. You see the replay on your screen right there as Dylan Jones was just trying to get off into turn 1. It looks like the 77 might have gotten into the back bumper and turned him sideways. And these guys had been having a pretty big battle all night long. Well, I'm pretty sure Dylan Jones is not going to be happy with that 77 machine. And if he has an opportunity to get back to him, it could get pretty ugly for those guys.
He's off track again. The 11 machine with a big bobble in the infield. You saw the replay, though, as we rejoin live. Certainly, he got assisted by Michael Cozy Jr. in that battle for position. I'm very surprised that it's taken 15 laps into this oval race to see contact and battle for position. And all of those drivers were battling very close to one another, and that is a corner where you're coming from such high speeds, because again, you're basically running nearly 3/4 of the oval, so you're coming off of turn 4. Top speed for Bowie was 179.
And there's contact between the 3rd and 4th place drivers, David Comstock, Kyle Kamer. They have issues down here in the infield. It started as they were trying to come off turn 1. Kyle Kamer did not get into turn 1 the way he needed to. Comstock got there. He got into the left rear, turned him sideways, and then the overcorrection took the Comstock machine with him. And both of those drivers are now losing significant time on the racetrack. Daniel Falkingham was able to get by, and now you can see these two are still bumper to bumper after that contact. So you've got to wonder how upset Kyle Kamer is after that incident right there between those two. Comstock looked like he was a little impatient trying to get that position. He saw the opportunity, and it's not really necessarily his fault. He saw an opportunity based on a mistake that the 8 made. You have to take that opportunity just because of how difficult it's been to pass so far.
Back live, you watch the fight. I look at the camera right onto the bumper. The 42 gives him a push. You saw the replay. It was certainly Comstock who came in hot after Kamer missed the corner, and it was very slow initiating the contact. They both bounced off of each other and spun onto the infield. Let's see what happens now as this fight takes its way down to turn 1, and the 8's very committed. He throws it hard into the corner. The 42 sees it. He'll cross him up. Great move by Comstock, and he'll squeeze him. Kamer going to get shoved into the outside wall, and there is no love lost between these two.
No love lost at all, and that was slightly surprising out of Comstock by me. I did not expect him to do that, but the great crossover move, I expected him to do that. I saw the 8 really drive the car down into the corner, and I knew what Comstock was going to do, having raced with him for so many years. However, the contact going off into turn 1 was a little surprising there, but now he's got a gap, and he doesn't have to worry about that 8 machine as much. He's able to hold on to that 4th position, but while all that happened, they went from only being about 6 seconds off the race leader to being over 18 seconds back, and that pretty much takes them out of the running for even a chance at this race lead and potentially a victory here tonight. And for both of these drivers, neither one of them have a win yet in 2018. We're certainly looking for that, but now they have their work cut out from them. They're even going to have an opportunity at it.
It's going to be difficult for sure, and all of a sudden, really spreading things out as turn 1 continues to be the place to keep an eye on this evening. Still nobody yet down on the pit lane. A battle with Dave Washington, and it looks like that's the 14 of Jason Jacoby. That one for 9th and 10th position down into turn 1. Cozy a little bit slow through turn 1. Now make it a 3-way fight as they catch up on the back of him for P8. The 14 of Jacoby was a lot better than Washington that last time on the oval part of the racetrack. None of that really mattered, though, because by the time they got into the heart of braking zone, all of it balanced out with one another. And we'll see how all of this plays through the 98 to 77 single file as they roll.
I tell you what amazes me the most is how close some of these battles are after 18 laps, and and it being a road course like it is, you typically expect to see these drivers get really spread out, and for the most part they are. But this battle here, before the contact between the 11 and the 77, there was 5 of them racing for position, almost like they were racing on the oval lap after lap. And now you see side by side down the NASCAR back straightaway heading towards 11 and 12. Right now, Washington's able to get by the 77 of Michael Cozy Jr. Can the 77 fight back? It doesn't look like he's going to be able to, as now Jacoby is to his inside trying to make something happen as well. Jacoby takes that spot, and now as they head down turns, or towards turn 1, he makes that move to the inside of David Washington, tries to outbrake him. Now here they go. Are they going to go 3 wide? They tried to go 3 wide. The 77 looked, but he wasn't able to make it happen.
Yeah, he backs up turn 1 so much that he gets back into throttle well ahead of those cars in front of him. And Cozy, if those cars weren't there, probably would have stayed in the gas. Jacoby tries to go outside. There's no runoff there, though. If you're on the normal iteration of this roll, the repave, if you will, I think the 14 machine finds a lane up top, but instead all he found was grass, got out of the throttle. Cozy passes him up, and now we re-rack him and sack him. It's Washington leading this fight in P8. Cozy had been aligned to Jacoby 10th. And even then, the 14 not wanting to give this one up. He's right there. And they race it on the oval, Brian, just like we're racing here, like we did earlier in the season. Like, it's no big deal. Side by side, we've seen some 3 wide to this point. And on the inside, Jacoby makes the pass. Like I said, very good on the oval.
And the big thing about the oval portion of this racetrack is because of the gear these guys are running, when they get up in the 4th gear, you can really get a big run. So that's why it is so pivotal coming out of the infield portion of the racetrack onto the NASCAR turn 1 to try to get back into the gas as quickly as possible. Oh, as the 77 machine makes contact with the turn 1 wall and loses a ton of time. But you got to get back into the gas so quickly, because if you got somebody right there with you and they get back into the gas a little bit quicker, you're going to lose a significant amount of time. We actually saw that when Dave Washington made his way past the 77 and the 11. He got up through the gears a lot quicker than both of those drivers because they were racing side by side. And when we got to the NASCAR backstretch, he was able to just drive past both of them because he had such a big run. That's how important it is, and you can really make a lot of time. Right here, this is the section they've got to get back into the gas as quickly as possible. You can see the 14 does a really good job as he closes in on the back bumper of Dave Washington, runs high, looking for a little bit of momentum coming off of the banking. It looks like he might have it here as they go down this back straightaway. Looks to the inside of the 98. The 98 throws a block, but he's going to get down there anyway. They're side by side. No, they're not, as actually Dave Washington was able to hang on. Jason Jacoby backs up, tries to look for it down here in turn 11 and 12. Gets a pretty solid run. Now, can he outbrake him down into turn 1?
14 just so good on the oval. The 98's not going to dare block into turn 1. And we'll see if they can both get it woed up in time to make the corner. Jacoby takes the spot so close to the wall. And you saw the 77 Cozy. He slapped that outside wall as they came through turn 1. These drivers use it every single inch of the racetrack that they are given. And something tells me this 3-way fight is far from over. Although if Jacoby can help it, if he can get a little bit of space here, Brian, down the back stretch of the infield, the right-hander now as they go into 5. And then the double right-hander now right here over the hill in turn 6 as they head back down the hill now. If Jacoby can get a little bit of a gap right here, he might be able to pull away on the oval.
Well, the 14 has an advantage on the oval part of the racetrack because his car is clean. He doesn't have any damage to the car that can be seen. You see there's an incident on the backstretch. It appears back there. Kyle Kamer has issues on the backstretch. We'll have to go back and see. You look on the replay right now. It was him trying to race with the 42 of David Comstock once again coming up off of the NASCAR turn 2. He got to the outside, and actually I think he might have been trying to go after the 42 machine. He got a little sideways in doing so and ended up hitting the outside wall very, very hard. Unfortunate right there for him, but big moment for both of those drivers, and you can see the 8 car is the one that's going to hurt the most from it.
Yeah, we come back live. They both got sideways at the same time, and I think Kamer saw Comstock loose also, didn't want to get into him, and therefore turned a little bit more abruptly to the right. That car now left with some heavy right side damage. We'll see if he decides to bring it down to the pit lane for service or if he'll stay out there and try to tough this one through. If the idea is to come down to pit road at the halfway point and go for a 1-stopper, clearly nobody going for a 2-stopper, I don't think, at this point, just based on what we're seeing strategy-wise. If the call is one stop on pit road, about 6 laps away or so, 5 laps away from entering that window, when we cross the halfway point, again, 55 laps to the board tonight. That means when you transition over from lap 27 to 28, it'll be the cross flags point. If you're coming in for tires, that's the time to do it.
Yeah, I think at this point everybody is going to go for the one-stopper. I was thinking if you had to pit more than once, you would do it on lap 20 and lap 40 to make it a two-stop run and have 15 laps to the end when it was all said and done. But yeah, it looks like everybody's going to make it a one-stop race, which means around lap 27 or after, you're going to expect everybody to come in. And as we're talking about that, the number 98 machine of David Washington has officially made his way to pit road. So now that makes you have to wonder, can they go the full distance? Because from here, he's got almost 30 laps that he's got to go. He's actually got to go over 30 laps to make it to the end of the race. So it's going to be very difficult for this 98 machine to make it to the finish unless he knows that he's inside of his window.
Yes, so get another look at how all of that shakes out as we were talking about Dave Washington onto the pit lane. He certainly had a lot of damage, so I think maybe his decision to come down to the pit lane a little bit premature in response to the damage, and he will blend back out onto the racetrack. If you have race leaders diving down into turn 1 there at the same time that somebody's coming off to the pit lane, close your eyes and hope for the best. There is not a ton of space there at all. And even though there are white markings on the racetrack, I don't think that that is subject to the new and more restricted pit exit rules that are on the iRacing service. So you're essentially, equal rights to that space. Maybe you should yield certainly to the faster cars, but we'll see if we do see ourselves with a situation at any point as this race continues to work on. I think the key is, though, Brian, I exactly agree with you when you were talking about the ability of Jacoba to still be fast out on the racetrack, on the oval specifically, and some of the other things is keeping that race car clean. For Radars, a clean car. Preet, also with a clean race car. Same thing can be said for Falkenham, who scored 3rd, and then Bowie's got a little bit of damage in 4th, but that's when you take a big jump to 23 seconds off of the race leader. Good fight you're watching with Bowie P4 and David Comstock P5 line. Police still out of the back end also, so certainly keeping your car clean of key importance here early on.
It is, and as we were talking about Jason Jacoby keeping that car clean, about a lap ago going off into turn 1 on lap number 23, he did not make it into turn 1 and kind of had an issue like what we saw in the Monster Energy race where he just did not get that car turned in. He actually ended up hitting the pit barrier trying to turn off into the corner. He just locked the left front up, could not get it straightened out, and then just drove it right into the tire barrier. So the clean race car that was the 14 now has some pretty significant front end damage, and he lost a ton of track position. He went from being up in the 8th position and only being about 36 seconds off the race leader. Now he's 44 seconds off, and he's back to 10th. So that's how quickly things can change for these drivers. And unfortunately for Jason Jacoby, who was having a pretty solid night up to that point, he's now got a lot of work to do if he wants to get back to where he was.
And you're starting to really see these drivers struggle as this run goes on. Michael Cozy Jr., I think, is hanging on for dear life in the 77 machine. Smacked the wall on NASCAR 2 that last time by. He was out into the grass just a moment ago, doing everything he can to hang on. A battle for P5, though. Here comes Adani 7 to Lino Callisto up the inside of Comstock, and don't expect much of a pushback for the 42. He knew he got beat coming off of turn 9, and there at that point wasn't much that he was going to be able to do about it. So Callisto, I think your biggest mover to this point of the race. Bowie's done a lot, but Lino Callisto started 11th position, and he'll crack the top 5 through 25 laps now.
Yeah, and this doesn't surprise me at all because, like we talked about earlier, Lionel Callisto is very, very good on the road courses, and it's more surprising to me that he didn't get to start towards the front of the field because I believe had this 97 machine started somewhere up in the top 5, he might have been a factor for the race lead, which, speaking of the race lead, there's not really a whole lot to say about that right now as Andrew Freenarch has opened that gap up in a tremendous way, almost 11 seconds over the one car of Daniel Falking, and Spencer Preet has fallen back. He's been really struggling the longer this run has got to keep the handling good on that race car. He's fallen back to 3rd, and he is 15 seconds behind the race leader. So that's how spread out these things are, but how dominant the 88 car is once again. And as we talked about earlier on, Evan Masoko, he's on his way to an unprecedented 5 wins in a row.
Bowie sideways, yeah, Farinar seems nice and under control, but Brandon Bowie everything but as He nearly spun, coming back up and onto the banky. To be talked about how loose these cars are going to get there, especially on old tires. He caught it, but not before Kalisto now into 4th position, and Comstock also getting by him, but drivers down onto the pit lane. Brandon DeBowie is on pit road for service. Daniel Falkenham comes in from 2nd. A couple of changes there as drivers have hit down to the pit lane. Importantly, Brian Spencer-Preet from 2nd has already come down, gotten his service. He's out there on fresh tires, but he can't get up time because he's stuck behind the 12. That's a critical holdup for Spencer-Preet. He needs to get a hard lap now, hopefully to make up the difference to Farinar. That was an atrocious section for the 37.
Yeah, absolutely. What he did not need to see right there, trying to make up some time, but now he's got some clear racetrack. He can try to make something happen right now, and he needs to be on it as much as he can over the next couple of corners to try to get as much time as he can on these guys. But how about, and Freenarge is actually on pit road right now on lap 27. He's going to do exactly what we were talking about, split this thing down the middle at halfway. He's on pit road. This is where you cannot make a mistake, because as clean as Andrew Freenarge has been, one mistake on pit road, a speeding penalty, not getting into your box right, any of those things could cost you the race lead, and you do not want to see that happen. So as he gets into his pit box now, it's got to be a very clean pit stop, and he has to make sure nothing happens. Obviously, it's going to be 4 tires and a full tank of gas after this very long green flag run for these drivers, and now you just have to wait and see what happens.
There he goes. Pass for that'll be for the race lead. The 88 machine exits the pit box, and he's going to have to be really tight on the exit because the 12 was coming through also. But despite the holdup, that short pit by Spencer-Preet gave him about a lap and a half on fresher tires. And he has eclipsed Andrew Faridar's. And now the advantage on the tires goes back in favor of the 88 Ford. We should have plenty of green flag laps to the end of this race, but all of a sudden, the 88 is playing catch-up for the first time in who knows how long.
Yeah, he has been out front for a very long time in this series, and now he has to do exactly what you just said. That's try to catch back up and take the race lead away. About half of this race left to go for him, so he has plenty of time. And we saw how fast that 88 car was the longer the run got, so you've got to believe he can make this gap up. But now this is where, if you're Spencer-Preet, you have to run flawless laps. You have to run every lap like it's a qualifying lap, and you cannot make any mistakes. You just have to hit your marks and hope that you can keep that distance far enough to where the 88 cannot get back to you. And for Spencer-Preet, it's been a long time since he's been in victory lane this season. You have to go all the way back to Dover back in May. That's the last time he went to victory lane. So it's been a little bit of a dry spell for this 37 car, looking to try to do it. He's got about a 6-second advantage over that 88 machine if he wants to hang on and actually get this thing done.
Rest of the field certainly aware of what's going on, because Brian Chambliss, very courteous, gets out of the way and lets Andrew Farinar go. The 88 thanks him over the radio. Tough to compare with the last lap, so we're really going to see this time what the speed difference is between those top two, but certainly a 5.9 second advantage out of the Preet camp is huge. Vic goes on to win this race, and Brian, we kind of speculated earlier on if a move for the race win here happens, it could very well happen for the pit lane. The best lap that Spencer-Preet ran was a 1:06.8. That was the second lap of this race. The lap he ran before he pitted was a 1:11.8. You're talking about 5 seconds of fall off, and he short pitted him by 2 laps. That's where a bulk of that money comes from.
Indeed it was, and that was a very impressive move by the 37 machine, and that's what we talked about, just that opportunity. You can just pit just a lap or 2 sooner, and how much of a difference it makes. But now, like we talked about, he has to be flawless, and he was actually just a hair quicker than the 88 machine that last lap, about a 10th quicker. Every lap that you can hold him off is another lap that he has to work harder to get back to you to make something happen. So we got a nice battle going on the racetrack right now between the 98 and the 43 machine, heading off into turn 1, and you can see Comstock right behind these guys as well. This 3-way battle is going on for the 4th, 5th, and 6th position. And David Washington's just trying to do anything he can at this point to get closer to the front of the field. He's had a rough night. You can see all the damage on that car. Just doing everything he can, trying to salvage something out of this race.
Certainly looking to salvage something, and the scoring order going to update as this thing goes on. A couple more of the cars towards the back onto the pit lane is overshooting the 98 machine. Washington got out and into the grass. Here comes Comstock inside it, which now is the outside of turn number 8. And as they rejoin the banking, it is a pass for David Comstock. Washington is made to pay for that mistake that he made on the infield portion of the track. But as we have crossed the halfway point tonight for the Charlotte Roval, let's take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, and more. At lap number 31, Spencer Preet is now your race leader. Andrew Farinar's digging hard, trying to catch him. Farinar's was a second faster the last time. He sits 5 seconds behind, scored in P2. Then you'll find Daniel Falkenham in the number 1 machine. Cool, calm, and collected. He climbs up into a podium spot as they run right now. Brandon Bowie's had a little bit more of an eventful evening. He runs fourth just in front of the big group of cars we were just watching. Comstock P5, Washington 6 with Kamer 7, and Kalisto actually making moves. So Kalisto up to 7th, Kamer 8th, and that battle may be far from done. Dylan Jones out the back end 9th, and Cozy Jr. rounds out your top 10.
In the 11th position right now is Jason Jacoby. He's had some more issues and he has fallen back and almost went a lap down at this point of the race. He is 11th. The rest of these drivers are a couple of laps down. Ross Cato is 12th, 1 lap down. Brian Chamberlain is also 1 lap down in 13th. And as we mentioned earlier on in the race, Eric Stanford had some issues getting off into turn 1, was not able to make the corner and got very heavy damage to that car. He will finish 14th in this race. He is already out of the race for tonight. And this has been a look at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And as we mentioned, we're going to see the new version of this Roval very soon. So if you like what you saw in the Monster Energy Cup Series, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here right now, just imagine once we have the newer version of this track, it's going to be that much more exciting.
Yeah, there was a little bit of debate with the new Roval not making it to the iRacing service in time. Do we run the normal Charlotte racetrack? And again, because we pretty much knew who the round of 12 was going to be, the decision was made to go with it, and so far, enjoying it on the road course. Of course, you get to see a lot of the drivers who did not make a start here this evening return next week. We go racing from Dover. That is the start of the round of 12, where we will cut our 12 remaining playoff drivers down to 8. It's going to be a ton of fun. You can see that one right here on LSR TV and the iRacing Esports Network next Monday, October the 15th, from the virtual Dover International Speedway. The battle for the race lead has nearly evaporated for the hands of the 37 to Spencer Preet, because Andrew Farinar's knocking on the door. A big mistake last lap for Preet, gave up nearly 3 seconds to the 88 machine, and all of a sudden he goes from being able to milk a 6-second advantage to fighting for his life. There's still 22 laps to go, and Farinar's is now within a couple car lengths.
And right now, Farinar's is like a shark in the water. He is just ready to pounce on that 37 machine if he can get there to challenge for the race lead, and he is just closing in ever so slightly every single lap. He was making up that time before Spencer Preet made the mistake that he made, and now he's got him right in his sights, and if he can get an opportunity, he's going to challenge. This is a big opportunity here. If you're a little bit closer than Farinar's is, you can outbrake the drivers. You see the 37 really locks the brakes up going off into turn 1. That's not what you need, as he opens that door and allows that gap to get just a little bit closer between these two. You can see we're on board with the 88 machine of Andrew Farinar's right now, and you can just see how aggressive Farinar's is through the infield portion of the racetrack, just doing everything he can, getting up through the gears, getting down into these corners as quickly and as hard as possible, and just absolutely impressive how strong this 88 car is here tonight.
And you got to be so careful through this portion. Look how much tighter he brings it in to the left-hander. That is turn 7 than what you saw to pretty much much wider. Basically same line as each other as they go through 8 that time, but it's those little things, those small differences, that when you compound them over, you know, the 12 quarters on the Roval here, and when you add that up over 55 laps of uninterrupted contest, the things that make the differences. And Spencer Preet had to do this earlier in the race, but he tried to stick with Farinar's. Does he go for the blocker? Does he let him go to the inside? Here we go, side by side for the race lead with 21 laps to go. Preet's going to drive it in hard, try to stay on the outside. Do they get into each other? Tight that time in turn 1. It is a side-by-side battle for the race lead for the Charlotte Roval in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, and it is a successful defense for the moment as Preet hangs on. Frenars looks low, down the back straightaway with a run.
It was successful until they got to this point of the run. Now Frenars takes the position. Spencer Preet tries to fight back as he breaks hard into this section of the racetrack, trying to get back there. But now Frenars has the advantage as they make their way back up onto the NASCAR oval. Can Spencer Preet get back in the gas and maybe challenge him here? If he can get into the gas and get a pretty good run, he might be able to do it. Does just that. Gets a great run, but not going to be good enough, I don't believe, as it looks like Frenars is pulling away as they head off onto the NASCAR backstretch, and indeed he is. So Andrew Frenars has dominated this race, and on lap 35, he goes back to the point.
Yeah, when the 37 made that crossover to the inside, he just wasn't able to make it stick. You visibly saw the bobble, and once Frenars got back out and onto the bank, and it was done. And Spencer Preet had the right call. He went for the undercut. I think it worked perfectly in his favor. I still think if we run this race a handful of more times, one of them ends with the 37 to victory lane, because he has a fast car. But that critical mistake, he ran 108s and 107s all the way up until lap 32, and he ran a 110. He gave up a ton of time that lap, and that allowed Andrew Frenars to close in, who in comparison on that very same lap was 2.5 seconds better than him. And now the 88 machine looking for a 5th straight win. He would look to sweep the round of 16, and would be something considered unfathomable, but compared to what we saw just last week on Wednesday nights here on LSR TV and iRacing Live with our coverage of the eSpeed Contender Series, we saw Malik Ray sweep the round of 16 to win all 3 races. We'll see if that trend stays true as Frenars looks to do it tonight. And now he just has to look at about 19 perfect laps in front of him. Preet has no competition from behind. It is a big gap back to Falkenham, scored 3rd. So Spencer Preet, I think you got to accept P2. Try to stick as close to the 88 as you can in case he makes a mistake. But I mean, now you're talking about they're consistently a second different in lap times. Frenars just too good, it appears.
Yeah, at this point, that's all you can hope for, is that the 88 is going to make a mistake and that you can be there to capitalize. So right now, you still have to minimize your own mistakes. That way you have the opportunity should something happen. You don't want to fall too far behind, because then you allow the 88 a mulligan, basically, where he can make a mistake and still potentially hang on to the race lead. But there's a little bit of a battle beginning to shape up between 5th and 6th. That's David Comstock in the 42, Lana Callisto in the 97. The 97 has been running down that 42 machine over the last couple of laps and has closed that gap down to less than a half a second at this point of the run. And he's doing everything he can to try to challenge to get back inside the top 5. He had a big issue coming on the pit road for his green flag pit stop that cost him a ton of time. He was up there with Brandon Bowie before it was all said and done, so he lost about 3 seconds overall, and now he's just trying to rebound. You can see he has still got a fairly clean car. Probably the cleanest car aside from the 88 machine right now is the number 97 of Lionel Callisto, and if he can keep pace with that, he might actually be able to get up there and challenge with Brandon Bowie and David Comstock before it's all said and done.
See if that is going to be the case. If he is able to get up there and fight with those two, the gap less than a second the last time by. Certainly a lot of positions that could still have an ending conclusion here, if you will. Ross, Cato, Brian Chambliss, the only drivers a lap down that are still scored onto the racetrack. I believe that Jason Jacoby's probably not going to finish this race on the lead lap. With the amount of time that is still left, he has been able to get away with the limited practice earlier on in this segment. Of course, in more conventional racetracks. Last week we were at Richmond. The week prior to that we were at Las Vegas for the opening races of this round of 16 on the playoffs in these English Auto LLC playoffs. And the 14 machine was able to come in, get a good Q lap and fight for it, but the lack of practice, I think, is what's hurting him tonight.
We have a battle between 8th and 9th right now. David Washington, Dylan Jones going after it right now as Dylan Jones gets to the inside of that 98 machine trying to take that 8th position away, and he will do so as he's able to get there. But Washington tries the crossover move, almost makes contact with them. They almost wreck each other.
Oh, there he goes!
Dylan Jones goes around. David Washington has to stop to avoid him, and you can see the 11 machine down in the grass just trying to get it gathered back up. That's going to cost them both a bunch of time. You can see the replay on your screen. These guys are just going after it hard. And I believe David Washington feels bad about what happened because he has backed off. He is allowing the 11 machine to get back in front of him. But while all that happened, they allowed the 77 of Michael Cozy Jr. to pass them for position. So Cozy is going to go from 10th to 8th in just a couple of corners because of that.
Hey, he'll be the big winner in all of that, and you saw in the replay, I'm not even sure that those two drivers got into each other. Dylan Jones had gotten onto the curb the quarter before, and I think just trying to give it too much throttle to stay in front of the 98 as we rejoin them live. That now has shuffled up the running order because Dylan Jones is going to miss turn 1. The 11 machine slides, the 98 follows him, and even though there's no tire wall there, nearly catastrophic, as we'll get a second look at that one. Both of those cars overshooting the quarter. The 11 machine trying to overtake a lapped car, missed it by a ton. And I think Washington partially, Brian, kind of basing his braking off the car in front of him, follows him in, and the 11 got into the inside wall, but ever so gently. You go into that wall any harder, and that car is totaled.
And it is so easy to do that when you're the car following, like we saw with David Washington. Like you just said, you base, as we're back live now, you base your braking zone on the guy in front of you. When you see him start to brake, that's when you know you need to be braking. And I think he just did exactly what the 11 car did. But fortunately, both of these drivers were able to keep the car fairly clean. The 11 just barely nosed it in, has a little bit of right front damage. The 98 didn't hit anything. He just came to a stop and then backed up and got going. So good for him on that one, but he still has pretty significant damage to the front end from some earlier incidents. But I think these two at this point are having some fun. They're teammates. They're hanging out. They're having a good time. They're just racing each other and just trying to get to the end. They're not in any position to race for the race victory. And for David Washington, he's not in the playoffs, so he's not really worried about it. Dylan Jones knows he's moving on. So these guys are just having some fun. A couple of teammates just out there making some exciting laps before this thing's all said and done.
They fight again now as this battle continues now into the infield portion of the road course. This installment of it is fight for 10th and 11th. The one downfall of all of this is they're probably not going to finish on the lead lap in this race as the 98 drives off, and Jones is going to pull a little bit of distance because again, Cozy passed them up on that first incident, took over 8th position. Jason Jacoby passed them on that most recent incident, which happened down into quarter number 1. So all of a sudden, these drivers find themselves 10th and 11th, and not that far in front of Andrew Farinars, who is hoping that if they continue to be aggressive with one another, have some fun, and maybe at the expense of the sheet metal, that does not happen when he tries to come through.
Indeed, as the battle between 5th and 6th is continuing on right now, as Kalisto is right on the back bumper of David Comstock, and Comstock is all over the place on the infield portion of the racetrack. He has been all night and just continues to just slip and slide as they roll through here. And that allowed Lionel Kalisto to get right to the back bumper of him, and now as they make their way back towards the NASCAR oval part of the racetrack, if Kalisto can get a pretty big run right here, heading back out onto the racetrack, he could potentially challenge. As Dylan Jones having more issues.
He just crashed it in turn 1. We had been seeing the 11 machine struggle at this part of the racetrack for so long, and he was starting to catch up to Jason Jacoby, so I think he was digging a little bit extra, drove it way deep. That car broke sideways, and there's a concrete wall right there, and Jones now going to limp that modified around the racetrack for what he can. See if he can survive these final 15 laps. That was a big hit, though, for the 11 car.
Yeah, it really was, and like you said, he has struggled down there in turn 1 a lot. I mean, he just slid off the track a couple of laps ago, had some issues earlier on in the race, and now just continues to have those issues. And I have to believe he's going to be coming to the attention of his pit crew, because I don't believe he's going to be able to run very long with the car looking like that. Definitely down on power now, as you can see. He just cannot get up through the gears here. And Dave Washington is also having issues as he went a lap down, actually. And Dylan Jones is shortly going to be following him, as Andrew Freenars is actually right behind him, getting ready to put him a lap down here in the next lap or so. And Andrew Freenars has opened that gap up after taking the race lead away from Spencer Pre. He's now opened that gap up to 6.1 seconds, and it just continues to grow. You can see Dylan Jones has another issue. Actually, I think he was pulling off the racetrack, not really sure, but big issues once again for the 11 car.
Yeah, missed turn 1 again. I don't think he's going to hit it as this thing continues to wear on. And if you've got, minor damage even we've been referring to up into this point, it's certainly been challenging when you're talking about the damage that he's got. Pretty difficult, I think, to do anything. Literally no front clip left on that race car. Close it in, going to be close to 10 laps to go in this race, and we wait to see if there is a handful of more positions maybe still to go. You've got Comstock, Callisto, Bowie, all somewhat on top of each other. We'll see if anything is still to play out. What we'll do is take one quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back to race to the end at the Rollville, you're watching LSR TV's coverage of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC on the iRacing Esports Network. Farinar's looking for a win. Back to Charlotte in a moment.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
And back live for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway road course. You're watching LSR TV's coverage of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC. Happy that you're with us tonight on your home for sim racing and the iRacing Esports Network. Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund upstairs with you, with our producer Brett Wheeler bringing us to you this evening. And we are waiting to see if Andrew Farinars could be the first ever Rollville winner in FTC history. But the fight right now is for P4. Brandon Bowie has only gone forwards tonight, and for that matter, so has David Comstock. But we'll see if that remains true as this battle for 4th, maybe the best one on the racetrack right now, down the back straightaway on the oval. They'll head into what is considered turn 11.
11 and 12 right here, and as they try to get down to the end of this thing, Comstock just wants to get everything he can out of this race. For all of these drivers, they know they're advancing into the round of 12, so nothing to be concerned about at this point. Just go out here and be as aggressive as you can. Try to get as good a finish as you can, just for bragging rights at this point, to say that you did it on the first race on the Charlotte Roval. And Comstock did a really good job getting through turn 1 that time, getting down into the infield. He's right on the back bumper of Bowie, and Bowie makes a big mistake. He gets off the track just a little bit. That opens the door for Comstock to get right there. If he can get a little bit of a run right here, he could potentially outbrake him and try to get to his inside, but not quite close enough to do it. He's going to have to try to back it up here, try again as they head out towards the oval part of the racetrack. Can he get a big run right here? This is where if he can accelerate and get back in the gas a little bit quicker, he can potentially make it happen. But Bowie does a great job getting up through the gears, and looks like he's going to be able to maintain that 4th position for now.
He'll defend it for the time being. I'm sure that that's going to be one that he tries to hold on to until the bitter end. It is the best battle on track right now. I thought Lionel Callisto was going to be a lot bigger factor in all of this. However, he's dropped off a significant bit. Kyle Kamer also 7th. Not all that far separated from this group, but still, 5 seconds is going to be a lot of time to make up. There is a battle that we have to keep an eye on, Brian, and Spencer Pritt, after leading this race after the pit stops, made a couple of mistakes, and he's certainly feeling the repercussions now, because Daniel Falkenham from 3rd has stormed up to him, and to be honest, I think this is a lot more Preet falling back to Falkenham than it is Falkenham catching up to Preet, because Preet, after, you know, hanging out a couple of seconds off of the back of Ferdinand after losing that battle for the race lead, is now 14 seconds behind your current race leader. He's completely fallen off pace.
He really has. You almost have to wonder if maybe short pitting for that 37 car is backfiring just a little bit right now, because he did pit about 2 laps earlier than both Andrew Freenarge and Daniel Falkingham. And while that move got him the race lead, now you can see it's really not paying off for him here. As you can see, the number 1 machine just continues to get closer and closer. The longer this run goes, Preet tries to get down into turn 1 as aggressively as he can. He has really struggled to get that car slowed down. I have seen him lock that left front up more times than I can count here tonight, and that again happens, which opens the door for Daniel Falkingham to get right to his back bumper. They do have the lap car of David Washington closing in on them right behind them. He's on fresher tires. He went to pit road to get some tires and to get a little bit of damage fixed, and now he is just trying to log laps to get to the end, but he is on that advantage and could play a factor in this battle for third.
Yeah, he could very well be in this picture if he doesn't get out of the way, per se. So we'll see how any of this plays out, as the 98 machine sits right on the back of Falkenham, who I think has a very good chance over the course of what's going to be 7 laps to go this next time by of passing Spencer Preet in the fight for second. There's a bobble, the one to the outside, and here's the fight for second down into turn 11. I can promise you Spencer Preet is not going to roll over and give this one up, but the outside's where the speed's going to be. This could come down to who drives it in harder to turn number 1. And on the outside of Falkenham wins out in that fight. The 12's in the way. It's a big slide for the 1 car. He will hang on. Preet also slotways, and somehow all of that concludes with Falkenham maintaining second and no cars wrecking.
That was impressive, because when they went off into turn 1, I just knew the 1 car was going to be going for a spin, but somehow he hangs on to it. Spencer Preet gets sideways, almost wrecks it, and oh, you see contact between the 1 and the 12, and the 1 goes around. He's off the track, and he gives up that second position, and now Spencer Preet has that second position back. Falkingham, I think, was a little displeased with the 12 car with just being in the way down in turn 1, and maybe was trying to show his displeasure, but he picked the wrong place to do it, because he just cost himself potentially that second place position. I don't think he's going to have time to make that ground back up.
Yeah, in all honesty, the 12 did exactly what it should have done there in turn 5. I think I'll agree with you, Brian. Maybe the one of she'd wanted to move him up and out of the way, and the 12 drove in deep to leave the inside open for those leaders. And when the 1 machine went headhunting a little bit, if that was the case, that he drove himself off the racetrack. Could have just as been that the 12 machine braked a little bit sooner than what the 1 was expecting, and he locked it up and ended up off of the racetrack. The battle for second is not over, though. Preet takes it over in the 37. He's now got to deal with the lap traffic as he will get up and around the Ross Cato entry on the outside of the racetrack. Falkenham's not all that far back, though, so the 1 could get back up to the 37 here still. Don't count him out.
Oh, he absolutely could. We saw how quickly that 37 machine was dropping off before this happened, and he's still not really running the laps that maybe he wants to, so definitely still an opportunity for that 1 car to get back there, but he has to run some flawless laps, and if there were any issues between him and the 12 car right now of Ross Cato, he has to forget about them and just focus on trying to catch that 37 car. The 12 car is between them right now as they head back out onto the NASCAR oval. He needs to just try to get by him as cleanly as possible, try not to have any issues, and look like he's going to go to the outside. Cato is going to heed that position to him, so that allows Falkingham now to have a clear shot at the 37 car in these last 5 laps to see if he can get that second position back.
Going to be his objective as he tries to get something out of the waning laps here for the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Perfect opportunity as we close into the end to remind you that coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSR TV. Whether you spend your time on the sim behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from atop the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free or get the full pro version today by logging on to joel-real-timing.com for more information and a spinner.
We have Lionel Callisto around in turn 1. He was just trying to chase David Comstock. You see the replay on your screen. He made contact with that turn 1 wall, got spun around, and has some pretty heavy damage to the right side of that car. He was going after Comstock. He had an opportunity, and unfortunately that's going to cost him a position because Brandon Bowie was right there and able to capitalize. He's able to get by to take that 5th position away, moves Kalisto back to 6th, and now he also has to slightly worry about Kyle Kamer because Kyle Kamer is within striking distance should the 97 make another mistake.
And we will rejoin the battle for 2nd and 3rd, keep a half eye on all of that going on behind, but Kalisto certainly losing a position to Bowie by making that mistake in the aggressive dive down to 1, and it is that very same quarter where we pick up the fight for P2. Spencer Preet absolutely wheeling the 37 through the quarter, all kinds of out of shape, as he does everything he can to keep the one car behind him. And if Funkenham was able to recover from the tripping off and into the grass that he had just a few laps ago, I don't see Preet being able to defend for what is going to be 3 laps to go as of the next time by. That is plentiful passing opportunities between now and then. As he looks on the outside, if he can get the run here, a critical part of the racetrack, you get the run right here, the left-hander, turn 8 as we get back up onto the banking. Does he get a run to be able to keep with Preet? 37 sideways, and that's going to be the difference maker to the inside. It goes to the 1. Spencer Preet with an audible gasp over the radio. Not happy. He knew that he threw that one away there, and it's going to be easy pickings for Daniel Funkenham.
And it's just got to be a frustrating point of the race because you're so close to getting that runner-up finish, and we're just 3 laps away from the checkered flag, and you just want to bring it home with the run that you've had. He's been up in the top 2 pretty much the entire race, but really just struggling the longer this run goes as he tries to dive it off in the turn when he get back to the 1. Maybe a scare tactic to see if he can make him overbrake or outbrake him and make a mistake there, but unfortunately it did not work. But you also have to think about the attrition factor at this point. These guys have ran green flag for over an hour around this racetrack, and their only opportunity to take a breather was that 15 seconds when they were on pit road and their pit crew was working on the car. Aside from that, they have been all on the racetrack and working their tails off, just trying to do everything they can to keep the car clean and not make any mistakes and fight for position. At this point, you've got to be mentally and physically exhausted, and that could be part of what's causing Spencer Preet to have some issues. Just an hour of racing really just finally starting to get to him.
Yeah, you talk about, these drivers racing these green flag races, and the 37 almost wrecks that car on the transition from turn 8 up to 9. Again, 9 is NASCAR 1, if you will. Preet just about wrecked the race car there. I think these guys are spent. You're talking about 12 quarters of very difficult racetrack that I'm sure most of these drivers haven't spent a ton of time on the service up until maybe the last few days practicing, because again, most people just waiting for that new Roval scan to hit the service, which it will in the coming months. And we've been going at it now an hour and 6 minutes since the drop of the American Ethanol green flag earlier tonight. Certainly no short order, and we've seen small mistakes here, small mistakes there. That's expected when you have so many opportunities to throw it away, but I think that is what is going to make this win for Andrew Freitas that much more impressive, maybe Brian, than the others, is how disciplined he's been for so long. Has not blinked, I don't think, since we started.
He hasn't blinked since we started the season. I mean, Andrew Freitas has been absolutely incredible. He's already got 7 wins on the season, well on his way to his 8th win as he comes to the white flag right here. He's got just another 2.25 miles to go. If he can make a flawless 2.25 miles, he'll get his 8th win on the season, and he will sweep the round of 16, as you mentioned earlier on in the night. Absolutely incredible, the dominance we've seen out of this 88 car. And it really has to make you question who is going to be able to challenge this 88. We obviously know there will be 3 other drivers challenging for the championship at Homestead here in a couple of months' time. But at this point, who has the ability to get up there and actually take this thing away from him? Because we have seen Andrew Freitas be good on every type of racetrack. He's now on his way to winning at a road course. He's won on the short tracks. He's won on the speedways. I mean, he has been absolutely flawless everywhere, every step of the way.
He's been oh so good. Just flashback to Watkins Glen when we saw Dylan Jones get the win there in the middle of August as Freitas hits the bank for the final time. At that point, both he and Freitas had 5 wins apiece, and we were talking about the dynamic duo, but since then, it has been all Andrew Freitas. A win at Darlington and Indy to close the regular season. He's got the first 2 on this round, and what is going to be a season-high 5th win in a row is also going to be a sweep of the round of 16. Freitas conquers the Charlotte Roval.
Absolute dominance on the part of the 88 machine. He's got 22 seconds back to the second place car. He's going to be well on his way to celebrating before half of this field even gets to the checkered flag. I mean, that's just how dominant he's been. Daniel Falkingham makes his way off of the NASCAR Turn 4, off of the Turn 12 of the Roval. He will get second place. And Spencer Preet can't breathe too heavily right now because he's got the number 42 David Comstock behind him, but it looks like he's going to hang on. He'll get third. Comstock will come home in fourth. So incredible drive by all of these drivers here tonight to not have any more issues than they did, especially considering they did this thing for almost an hour and 10 minutes without a chance to take a break at all.
Yeah, really appreciate all of the drivers who wanted to come and race tonight. It's a little bit of a fun race. I think certainly if the championship implications were going to be a little bit more major, we might have ended up just on the Charlotte Oval. But we had our top 12 basically locked up. Not mathematically, of course. Always a chance that somebody who was not going to have an opportunity to race for these entire 10 weeks in the third segment of the year shows up and makes something happen. But certainly a tip of the cap to those who showed up. Again, we'll see the full field back next week at Dover. But a ton of fun. Happy we made it to the Charlotte Roval at Andrew Freitas with a season-high 8th win overall and 5th in a row. Unstoppable as he celebrates on the front straightaway as your race winner tonight in the Charlotte Roval 125. He's got a ton of places to go do burnouts. We'll keep a half eye on where the celebration takes him, but when he makes it down to victory lane, we will catch up with him there. We'll take one final opportunity to step aside. Back for the post-race show in a moment. You're watching the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on the iRacing Esports Network. This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSR TV, and it may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSR TV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And back live from the Charlotte Motor Speedway for the LSR TV post-race show. Following tonight's Charlotte Roval 125, we now have 23 races complete, 7 still to go. on the 2018 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC. Happy that you've been with us tonight on the iRacing Sports Network, and happy that you're sticking with us alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund upstairs with Brett Reeler, bringing us to you this evening. We'll go trackside in just a moment. First, I want to remind you, as always, and to give a big thanks to tonight's title sponsor, English Auto. English Auto LLC is a full-service luxury automobile repair center in Odenton, Maryland, that is conveniently located to serve both the Baltimore and DC markets. English Auto specializes in Jaguar, Land Rover, Mercedes, Volvo, and BMW service. Founded in 2007, English Auto is now in its 11th year of business, and with a staff that has over 60 years of combined experience in the automotive service industry, English Auto has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. For more information, you can visit them online, www.englishauto.us, and connect with them on social media, facebook.com/English Auto, and on Twitter @English Auto LLC. For more information, here's a look top to bottom at your LSR TV full race results. Andrew Ferreira's with the win, on top of Daniel Falkenham, who does snatch second away from Spencer Preet, who comes home in third. We'll be trackside with all of them momentarily. Brandon Bowie comes home behind Dave Comstock. That's going to be 4-5 respectively. Rounding out your top few finishers. Lionel Kalisto comes home P6 in this one. Kyle Kamer 7th. Michael Cozy Jr. hanging on for P8. Jason Jacoby 9th. And Dave Washington a lap down through the top 10.
Ross Cato will come home in that 11th position, just 2 laps down here tonight. Brian Chambliss limps his way home to finish 12th, 7 laps down. The last 2 drivers in the field tonight fell out early. Dylan Jones had so many issues towards the end of this race. He finishes in the 13th position, and Eric Stanford fell out of this thing pretty early on. He will finish 14th to round out your 14-car field here tonight. And Evan Pasoko, I believe you've been familiar getting to speak to this driver every single week. Well, you're getting to do it for a 5th week in a row. Andrew Freenar's down in Victory Lane.
Yeah, we've chatted with this driver before, and it's going to make a 5th week in a row that Andrew Freenars is in Full Throttle Cup Series Victory Lane tonight from the Charlotte Roval. Andrew, congratulations on the win. And first and foremost, we decided to stick with this track, and we had a ton of fun watching it, so thanks for coming out racing with us this evening before we kind of get back to business next week at around 12. And we thought maybe this race, more of a curveball than Talladega, maybe even. Maybe this would be the one that breaks the win streak. It was not. You guys so good again and so consistent. You keep that race car clean, and despite the fact that it looked like Preet might have had something up his sleeves by the end of this one, not even close for an 8th win on 2018.
Yeah, man. That was a tiring race. That track was hard. The setup was loose. You got to enjoy these loose setups. Next year, we're going to have all the downforce and less power. These things will be stuck to the ground. So you got to enjoy these races with ill-handling cars because, truthfully, they're really fun to drive. I even surprised myself tonight. I went away for this whole week and kind of tried to slam a whole bunch of practice into one day, and I couldn't even make 5 laps without wrecking the thing. So I tried to back it up, and long and behold, I thought we were slow, but we were able to keep the lead. Fun race, and good to get 5 in a row.
Certainly, we didn't really know what to expect coming into this one. Drivers had the last couple of days practice out on the set. Of course, a lot of people holding off on this race because we're waiting for the new iteration of the Roval to come. That'll be here in a couple months, and I'm sure it's going to be one of the more popular circuits on iRacing. But, the challenge is this is essentially the same racetrack, just you don't have the kink on the backstretch, and you don't have the kink on the front stretch. But I think more so than that, even though the inside part of the track's the same, there's none of that runoff that the drivers in the Cup Series had 2 weeks ago. So that margin for error was so minuscule. How'd you prep for this one? How did you think it was going to go also? Because we saw some fast cars in practice not take a time in queue, probably afraid of turn 1, lap 1.
Yeah, I ran this configuration in another league I run on Thursday night, so that really helped me kind of figure out what we're doing. And, it was just, like I said, I could have went a lot quicker at the start and maybe through the run, but it's just, you make that mistake, you're done. I think you saw a lot of drivers overshoot turn 1 and hit the wall, or just, getting on the oval part, spinning out. So I think I had a lot more speed in it than I was showing. It was just take it easy and, don't wreck the thing. Even that first run, you could see Preet was catching me somewhat. I think we had even cars, to be honest. But, I was just trying to stay consistent and, maybe had a little bit left in it, but just take it easy and, I think it really paid off because you saw their got some damage and that killed him. I didn't get in the wall or anything, and I was able to pull away.
Obviously, the racing that we saw was fantastic. A lot of guys, I think, with the absence of that chicane on the back straightaway, made that a lot more of an oval. I think it was a lot bigger of a factor going into turn 3 full speed. We saw it was behind you, but there was 3 wide at one point out there on the oval early in this race for position. Guys were going side by side, certainly weren't shying away from one another and kind of challenging each other as this race went on. Did you feel like maybe you expected drivers to be a little bit more timid than they were, or, having to run with these guys now for 20-some-odd weeks, that it was going to be a hard battle no matter what?
I think it's the playoffs, and, we're going hard for that. And then on top of it, mostly everybody was locked in today. So it's kind of last race before you really got to focus and be good. So kind of just, we raced hard, but we had a lot of fun out there tonight. So I think that's what I was expecting. And to touch on that oval part, man, you don't know how scary it is to go in turn 1 here, because you're flying at maybe 200 miles an hour and you got to get on the brakes to 80 and not overshoot that. That's some feeling, especially, even when you get new tires, you don't know where to brake, and sometimes you feel like you're going to overshoot it. It's a heck of a feeling going into turn 1 here.
Very unforgiving yellow wall on the right-hand side. A couple of drivers found it. You did not. What you do is you find a victory lane, Andrew. The round of 12 awaits. We'll catch you next week at Dover. But for now, you're on top of the mountain. Sponsors, shout-outs, all that good stuff. Who makes it happen?
Yeah, big thank you to everybody on Aegis, Dave Washington, Dylan Jones, Eric Stanford, Ross Cato, Kyle Kammer, Daniel Everhart, just everybody who makes this happen. You guys for broadcasting, especially you, Evan, for all you do for this league. All the fans for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a herd race. I hope it was fun to watch, and all the drivers really like running with all these guys. That's it. Look forward to Dover next week.
There's nothing on Monday nights without you guys, so Andrew, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you showing up and playing along tonight as we threw the roval at you guys to get a congratulations on another win. And it's a points reset, I think a little bit more serious next week. We'll catch you at the Monster Mile.
Yep, look forward to it. My favorite track.
Certainly look out for the 88 as he looks to go for what would be a 9th win on the season, but a 6th in a row if he can carry this winning streak on into that round of 12. And a surprise, maybe second place finisher. It was a late race pass in this one. Daniel Falkenham comes home second position tonight for the Charlotte Roval. Trackside with him is Brian.
Indeed, I am. I'm down here with our second place finisher, Mr. Daniel Falkingham. Daniel, very impressive drive up through the field here tonight. You had a fast race car, obviously not quite the car you were looking for to go to victory lane, but a great drive to get up and pass Spencer Breet in the closing laps to get to second place. Take us through your night.
Yeah, for pretty much, I had a pretty lonely race to say the least. I mean, I had a pretty good start after Breet didn't get off the line like pretty good. Then I settled. Then he got back by me. I just rode in third. Then I had a big moment where I don't know like what's called. I'm just gonna call it like the turtle curbs like they had in real life. Like I hit one of those after the end of the long backstretch on the infield. I flew in the air, sent me off track. I was like, oh no, this is what my race is gonna be like. Then I gathered it back up and decided to ride in line. Then Kammer and Comstock got into it. I managed to get by that clean, and then pretty much got lonely there. And then I saw Breet, I guess he had damage after he hit the turn 1 wall, and then I was just running him down after that. And then I got by him, and then I think that one was my fault between me and Kate and Ross, because I think he was trying to let me go, and I misjudged it, because I didn't want to try to go by him, because it's pretty hard to pass in that corner, but pretty much to pass anybody. So, yeah, I tried to be a little bit cautious through there, and I kind of screwed myself over, but I managed to get back to Breet, and pretty much how my race went.
And just talk about the preparation it took to get used to running this Roval. You're so used to running the Charlotte Oval, and we come here and we're running something completely different. It's not necessarily the version of the track that maybe everybody wanted to run because we don't have the updated version yet. So a few differences to this track versus the actual version that we hope to run in the future. How difficult was it to actually get comfortable with this racetrack and get familiar with the way that the racetrack is in the infield and all the different turns? You're so used to running when you go to a road course, it's Watkins Glen or it's Sonoma, so you already have an idea what to expect, but this is a complete unknown as a driver.
Yeah, it was like when I came into the session, like the server tonight, I had no practice. I saw like a setup was made, but I decided like, you know what, I'm just gonna come in and learn from theirs. Like But yeah, it was pretty difficult to learn, especially. But then once I got in the groove of things, I was starting to get more and more used to it. Plus, I saw Evan's hot lap on Twitter, so I kind of learned. Based off of that. So thank you, Evan. But yeah, overall, just doing it like with yourself, like as a driver, I'm just doing it that's just the hardest thing, especially doing it on like 30 lap tires is. Boy, it was a handful. I think out of all the racing I've done, that's probably the hardest I've ever had a work a race car on all my time on iRacing.
Absolutely. And now that we've gotten through the round of 16, we're into the round of 12. This is when things get a little bit tighter. We didn't really have much to worry about in this round because obviously there was a handful of drivers that didn't show up. But now you have to worry about fighting your way into the round of 8. Obviously, most of these drivers are showing up every single week. As we head into this next segment of the playoffs, what do you have to do? Obviously, Dover, Talladega, and Kansas being that segment, what do you have to do to make sure that you get into the round of 8 to give yourself an opportunity to go to that Final Four?
Yeah, I know it's going to be super tough because we got a lot of great drivers, but for me, I feel it's just going to be consistent running, consistent finishes, because I know I ran great at Dover, like, earlier in the year, but then I killed myself. Then I had a good run at Talladega, and then I killed myself there with pit road penalties, but I've had good runs there at Dover and Talladega, but then Kansas is going to be an unknown since it's the only time we run it this season. So, yeah, I feel like it's just going to be getting consistent at those tracks and just learning how to drive the cars there. So, all about consistency and trying to make no mistakes.
Absolutely. And before we let you go, Daniel, sponsor shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you on the one car?
Yeah, I got to thank First Rate Bait who've come into the virtual world with me. It's like they actually sponsored me in real life this year. I asked them to come down and sponsor me for this campaign. Thank you to them. But I got to thank Cameron Colby's Eye Paints for designing my car. I really liked how it looks. Also, I got to thank everyone at LSR TV and everyone watching for a good broadcast, and everyone on the iRacing Esports Network, and everyone at RSR for putting on this league.
Well, congrats on your good run here tonight. We'll see you next week at Dover, Daniel.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Runner-up here tonight at the Charlotte Roval, Daniel Falkingham had a great night. Now I'm going to slide just a little bit over here and catch up with our third place finisher, Mr. Spencer Preet. Spencer, you had a pretty solid night here tonight. You did manage to lead a handful of laps on some pit strategy, pitting a couple laps earlier than Andrew Freenarge. Overall, a pretty good night, finishing P3.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. I felt like early on, I felt quicker than Andrew a little bit. I felt like I could really gain on him in certain parts of the track, but you know, I made too many mistakes early on, and I've never seen that dude mess up. I mean, he's about as consistent as they come, and in a race like this where it is just in a race like this where it's just so hard to handle the car, it's almost impossible to not make mistakes, and he somehow did that tonight. And I mean, every time I felt like I was reeling him in early on, I'd mess up and lose a couple tenths, lose a second, and then start reeling him back, and then lose another second, and then I knew I was gonna have to go off strategy and pitted early. Worked out. I got like 6 or 7 seconds on him off the pit stop ahead of him, and I knew I just needed to back it up and save my stuff because I was gonna have to go a lot more laps on those tires than he was, and I don't know if I misjudged. I felt like I backed up my entry into turn 1 way more than I normally would at that point in the run, and I just could not ever get the car to rotate, and I stuffed it into the wall and tore down the whole right front, and it was slow on the straightaways and slow in the corners and just a hunk of junk for the next 20 laps of the race. So in hindsight, I think I probably would have just stayed with that strategy, but maybe take it down another notch, because I really think I might have had something for Andrew if I could have actually been able to race him with a clean car. But in the state that it was in when he got me, I didn't have a shot.
And how difficult was it after you got damage on the car, and obviously the mistakes you made, it hurt the tires as well? How hard was it just to keep that car clean and not actually wreck it to the point where you couldn't get back to the checkered flag? Because we saw you slipping and sliding quite a few times in the closing laps. Obviously, that's what led to you losing the second position to Daniel Falkingham. What did you have to do at that point just to make sure you could limp it home?
I mean, it was impossible to handle. It got to a point where I couldn't. I mean, there were parts of the track where normally I'd be dropping it into first gear, and I was throwing it into third gear so that I just wouldn't spin the tires or slide. Or, I mean, there was points where I was just drifting through corners, and the tires were ruined. The car was obviously in bad shape anyway, and so the handling wasn't any better, and so the tires didn't get any better as the run went on, and I had to try to maintain what I could. And I thought maybe, when I lost the lead, I was still about 11 seconds or so ahead of Falkenham, but yeah, it got so bad, it degraded so bad that there was nothing left at the end. And when he got to me, even after passing him back after he had that thing with the lap car, I mean, there was just nothing I could do to hold him off. He's quicker on the straightaway and quicker all around the infield, so there's really nothing you could do at that point other than just try to hold on and keep it straight.
Well, if there is any consolation, if you look ahead to the next 2 weeks, Dover and Talladega, you won the spring Dover race, and of course you won the season opener at Daytona. So the next handful of tracks have to be a pretty exciting couple of weeks for you looking ahead. How do you feel about going into the round of 12 and your chances of moving on to the round of 8?
Well, Dover was kind of a surprise win when I won there earlier this year, and I felt like I was competitive. I felt like I probably could have finished in the top 3 anyway, but a lot of things happened in that race that kind of put me in a good spot. So I'm confident going into Dover. I feel like it's a track that kind of suits my driving style, but I mean, Talladega is Talladega. That's just going to be whoever can survive the mayhem. And then I don't know, is it Kansas after that? I mean, hopefully I'm in a position after the first 2 that I don't have to worry about Kansas, because that's not my favorite track.
Well, the one thing is for certain, Evan Pasoko wants to talk to somebody other than Andrew Freenars. He's talked to him the last 5 weeks, so you need to do something to make it happen. But before we let you go, sponsor shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you on that 37 car, Spencer?
Just shout out to Cozy, my teammate. We're pretty much the only ones left after everything that's went down this year. And shout out to his stream. Shout out to everyone watching. Shout out to the people keeping this league going. And a big thank you for putting on this broadcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving us something to broadcast every week and making the racing good. And congrats on your 3rd place finish here tonight, Spencer. We'll see you next week at Dover.
Thank you. See you then.
Great run for Spencer. He talked about how he lucked into a win at Dover earlier in the year. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, Evan Pasoko. And as we move ahead to Dover, you've got to believe he's excited knowing that he did go to victory lane at the Monster Mile. Definitely has some momentum in his favor heading into that race.
I'm certainly going to go back. Cozy has the live stream every week with him and Spencer on the radio, so I'm curious. I'm probably going to go back, listen to that, see what they were talking about those first couple of laps around the Roval. Certainly must have been quite the experience for those drivers. And again, to be honest, we come into this race, I think the novelty of it would have been excited enough, Brian, but these guys continue to impress us, and we say this week after week. And if you're just happen to stumble upon this broadcast this week, be with us at Dover. Be with us through the year. These drivers are very, very good at what they do. It is an extremely high strength of field in this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. Tons of stuff, and certainly a lot of great action week by week. So I'm certainly going to go back and listen to those guys. But we know who the 12 drivers moving on are into the next round. Of course, no doubt Andrew Freenars wins this. The win in the first place, first race out at Vegas, that punched his ticket, Brian, but he ends up winning on points this round by 38 to the next closest driver, but it'll be Freenars, Bowie, Comstock, Preet, along with Falkenham, Cozy, Jones, Kamer, and Eberhardt, Callisto, Guerrilla, and Vincent headed in to the round of 12. And again, now it gets a little bit more serious. The 4 drivers get eliminated from this one. Casto, Ewing, Silverwood going home, not able to compete on a full-time basis in this 3rd segment. Now 4 drivers who have been with us for the better part of at least 18 weeks this year are going to be going home after Dover, Dega, Kansas, but of course the Monster Mile due up next Monday. That's the one we're looking forward to.
Well, and as you mentioned, this field is so competitive, and I really believe this is going to be the most competitive round of the entire playoffs. You're going to be taking 12 drivers and knocking them down to 8, and when I look at the 12 drivers that are remaining, I can't pick 4 drivers that I feel like are going to be in the bottom 4. I believe every single one of these drivers has the ability to move on to the round of 8. So it's going to be an extremely tight through this next round. Of course, Talladega being the wild card, if something happens, a big wreck could happen to hurt their chances. That's going to be the one thing that could make a difference in this. But overall, I believe this is an open book. I think the only driver that's safe to say is going to make it through pretty easily is most likely Andrew Freenars, just because of how dominant he's been. You've got to believe he's probably going to be a factor, if not the man to beat next week at Dover and, of course, at Kansas in a couple of weeks' time. So it's going to be a very interesting round, and I can't wait to see how it all shapes up.
Even if somehow Andrew Freenars goes the entire round of 12 without a win, there's going to be guaranteed at least 5 positions based on the points. I think the 88 Machine's got that covered, as we have now taken 16 drivers and crunched them down to 12. We look to crunch them down to 8 over the course of the next few weeks. The good news is you don't have to wait till next Monday to catch more live sim racing action here on LSR TV. And, of course, iRacing Live and the iRacing Esports Network back on the LSR TV channel will be live this Wednesday, October the 10th, 9 o'clock Eastern is the green flag for the eSpeed Contender Series as they also work into the round of 12. And then on Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern time start as well for that one. The Sasra Series continues. All of that over on the LSR TV channel. Of course, you could get a look at our upcoming broadcast schedule on our website, www.livesimracing.com. But the best way to stay up to date with us is by engaging on social media. Like us at facebook.com/LSR TV official and follow us on Twitter at LSR TV for more information. On behalf of our entire team at RealSimRacing LLC and for your broadcast team tonight, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for our co-commentator this evening, Brian Backlett, and for our producer, Brett Wheeler. We want to thank all of you for joining us. Congratulations to Andrew Freenars, first ever Roval winner in RealSimRacing history. He's got 5 in a row, also a tip of the cap to the other 11 drivers that'll join him into the round of 12. We'll be back next Monday night, October the 15th, from Dover International Speedway. That race and every race on the run to the championship in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC can be found right here on LSR TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Concord. We'll catch you at the Monster Mile. The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSR TV, your home for sim racing.